Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and my guest today, Joe Baylock, is one of the founders and editor-in-chief of the online blog, the Burlingame Voice, founded in the early 2000s. Joe and his wife, Kathy, have lived in Burlingame for 34 years. His wife, Kathy, was a former Burlingame City Councilwoman and mayor as well. Joe enjoys following local events, taking jazz appreciation classes at the College of San Mateo, and volunteering as the vinyl record expert at Pick of the Litter, the Humane Society thrift store in Burlingame. And now my conversation with Joe Baylock. Joe Baylock, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's nice to be invited back.
You bet. Hey, if you don't mind, before we get started, I have a couple of fun facts that I found about you, asking around. You attended the U.S. Air Force Academy for 2 years. If you excuse my pun here, but why'd you bail out?
Mark, that was one of the toughest decisions of my life. As you know, it's not the easiest place in the world to get appointed to.
Absolutely.
And in fact, I have a neighbor down the street whose son is at Annapolis right now, so I enjoy watching his progress as he goes through Annapolis. I think there were a couple of things that came together all at once. One was I lost my navigator qualification of my eyesight, so I was going to be in some different role than I originally thought I was going to be when I went in. The other was I understand why the Air Force wants a well-rounded officer education, a big mix of some technology and some more liberal arts and other things. And I really wanted to zero in on the technical side of my education. And I found that out very clearly when I left the academy. We were still running punch cards through the mainframe computer in 1978.
Wow.
And then I get to Rensselaer Polytech, where I ended up graduating from, and there were what you might remember, IBM 3270 terminals spread all over campus, a much more technically advanced and more technically challenging.
And that's where you wanted to be, right?
That's I was very lucky. I wasn't sure what I wanted to study when I came out of high school or as a junior, and one of my neighbors in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, my hometown, looked at me and said, "With your math and science scores, you should go into engineering."
Yeah.
And that was pretty easy for me because my dad was an engineer.
Okay.
But I was wavering at one point.
But it was in the DNA.
Yeah. But the clarity from the neighbor, she just said it flat out, and I took that to heart. So I left. It was a hard decision. I still have some friends in my class. There's a strong camaraderie with the squadron you're in and the class you're in, and it was a tough call. You
made it through the first 2 years, though. Those are the two toughest years, aren't they?
Yeah, the first year is the toughest year.
Yeah, that's when they wash guys out and all that.
Yeah. Then the nice thing was I got to see both sides of it. Being a fourth classman, the lowest of the low. Right. I went through some very rigorous training, including survival, evasion, resistance, and escape training. Spent 24 hours in a mock POW camp. Jumped out of airplanes, perfectly good airplanes. Yeah. That was one of the first places in the country where your first jump was free fall. So you had to save your own life. And some other time
free fall and save your own life.
Sometime I'll tell you that story. We don't have time for the whole story today, but it's pretty fun. And then I got to be an upperclassman and see the other side of it.
Yeah. Okay, good.
But RPI was a phenomenal experience.
Yeah.
Jumping, out of the frying pan into the technical fire was just really something.
Fun fact number 2 here. Your buddy Russ Cohen and co-founder of The Voice gave me this fun fact. When you guys were just beginning the Burlingame Voice back in the early 2000s, apparently you had some business cards printed up. And according to Russ, you guys left them around town in conspicuous places. Is that correct? What are conspicuous places, if you don't mind?
I remember I brought you one.
Oh, look at that.
You get your very own card.
Look at that. We're going to kind of show that into the camera if we can. Look at that. That's terrific.
Because I still passed them out. I passed them out to a woman I'd only met once before yesterday. And we got talking about the sad state of affairs in downtown San Mateo. And I said, "You should be reading the Burlingame Voice," and handed her a card. I don't remember just leaving bunches of them around.
Okay.
But there were bulletin boards around town at various restaurants. I remember Mediterranean Kebab had a bulletin board where people would poke their business
Right.
cards up. So we would poke them up there. And I think what I remember was maybe I'd put 3 or 4 up there and put a single pin through it.
Some good results out of that?
It's always hard to tell.
Yeah.
We should ask the advertising guy to be sure, but I think it had some good results.
Good. Okay.
I constantly run into people who say they read it regularly. They got the RSS feed to work. Not everybody seems to be able to do that, which I wish I could fix, but
Yeah.
I can't. And it's just mostly word of mouth, and occasionally handing out a
Well,
business
thank you
card.
for the card. That's wonderful. That's
I'll sign it for you later.
Okay, and fun fact number 3, you have a pretty amazing wine cellar at your home. As I recall, and help me, is it downstairs?
It's underground.
Yeah, it's underground, and you have wines from around the world, right?
Wines from around the world.
Yeah. How many bottles, give or take?
It's 1,500 in racks.
1,500. And so you must
then-
have some cases
Then you can
sitting
put some
around.
on the floor as well.
Yeah. Do you have any particular place that you like to purchase wine? Do you have a favorite shop or anything?
Oh, that's a clear favorite. It's Wymax.
Yeah.
On Broadway.
Gerald? Right.
Gerald is the man. Gerald. A lot of people don't know this, and there's actually a Burlingame Voice post about Gerald called "Our Own Local Wine Luminary."
Yeah, I remember reading
Yeah,
that.
he's a pretty
He knows
famous
his
wine
stuff.
merchant.
He knows his
stuff, and one of the things he knows a lot about a lot of things, a lot of different regions and wines, but he's particularly good at Italian wines. I don't know if you knew this. He's fluent in Italian
I did not know that.
and goes regularly for buying trips.
Yeah.
And that's one of my passions, being half Italian. So,
Yeah.
the other thing that's great about Gerald is if you're out somewhere and you find a wine on a restaurant wine list, or somebody serves it to you as a friend,
You can bring it back to him or say, hey, I had
shoot
this
him an
at
email. I
someplace,
say,
and
yeah, can you find it?
Right.
And, what's the case price on it? And
he responds.
three
to it.
days later, he says, it's in the shop. Come
Yeah.
get it.
Good for him, and good for you guys.
It's such a fabulous example of local Broadway, long-time merchants.
Yeah. He's been there a lot of years.
A lot of years.
Yeah. All right. The reason why I brought you on the show as a guest, Joe, is that you pretty much keep a finger on the pulse of the city. You're vocal, and you love to share your thoughts, whether they're good or bad, and whether people want to buy in or not. But we like it, right? And
You're being kind,
well,
I think.
I
So,
picked a few topics today that I
Yeah.
thought we would discuss and let our listeners find out a little bit more about and appreciate.
Well, I'm going to count on you. If I start to drift off into something that's going to get you into more trouble with next door,
No,
you
well-
just stop me.
Yeah, next door I have issues with right now, but that's another story as
Yep.
well. So, speaking of your buddy Russ Cohen, did you read his guest perspective in the DJ today? He wrote a column in the
I
the
did,
Daily Journal.
and he was kind enough to also post it to the Burlingame Voice.
He told me he was going to do
so
that.
it's the top post today.
Great, great.
At burlingamevoice.com. If you can't click through on the DJ, you can click through there and add comments and whatever. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, he pretty much hit the nail on the head.
His perspective is at least twofold. One is the city needs to make it easier to engage with them, both outbound and inbound. And the other is people really need to be paying better attention.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know that a lot of people aren't paying attention.
Right.
I'll give you a perfect example. 2 elections ago, we had a competitive race in one of the districts until one candidate dropped out, a month before the election?
Correct.
And that person still got like 25%
Yep.
of the vote.
And that was, that was District 5. That was Peter Stevenson running
Stevenson,
against
yeah.
one of the ladies out there, right? She still got several votes. And
A
had
lot,
dropped
a lot of
out.
votes, but
Right,
she had already
right.
said, I don't want to do it.
I don't
can't
wanna
do
do
it.
it. Yeah.
I've got other commitments. So that's is there a more crystal clear example of people not paying attention?
Yeah, anyway, I thought he was pretty much right on, too. So it was good stuff.
And hopefully the city will take notice and
Respond.
and respond,
Yeah.
not directly, but by making changes.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
That's where, I think he and I share a perspective of being pragmatists. We want to not just highlight things that we think are wrong. We want to see things get better.
Right.
I want life to be easier here. Life, it should be easier for people to do stuff, get around, have their quality of life, and that's kind of a fundamental perspective.
So let's talk about the Broadway grade separation.
Do you want the bad news, more bad news, or the worst news?
Let's go with the worst news.
All right. So just as a bit of background, this has been in the works for, I could work my way back through the Burlingame Voice backlinks. It's got to be 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
And the challenges are, it's a complicated intersection, right? You got Rollins Road, Carolyn, California, and then the traffic continuing on to Broadway. So it's rated an F by the state. It's the worst. I don't know if there's an F minus, but if there was, we'd be getting an F minus.
That's what I understand, right?
And there's been gyrations on the design. A couple of things have made it more complicated lately. One is the electrification of Caltrain now means that the work that would happen at that intersection has to happen only when they can de-electrify the lines, meaning in the middle of the night. So long shifts of construction are out, right? They can only do that. I think the notation was 4 hours a night.
That's rough.
And you know what happens? Time equals money, right?
Absolutely.
So as soon as you start stretching out the project, the labor costs go up, the materials costs go up, and that's been a steady stream of occurrences for years. I use the analogy of you're trying to chase somebody who's faster than you.
Yeah.
And so you couple that with the restrictions or the encouragement of high density or super high density around transit stations, and that broaches the question of should we keep that train station open? As you know, it's only open 2 days a week on the weekends anyway, right? But 2 days is better than nothing, especially if you're a Giants fan.
Yep.
But so the city's got to decide, is it worth pushing for that? That raises the costs. So I think the bad news is as users of the intersection, Burlingame residents, we got to get used to it being the way it is for quite a while.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Does the Burlingame have to come up with funding?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They've been squirreling away funding for years. And it's a car that's going faster than they are.
Yeah.
Because we're not in a situation where we can fund a major part of a giant construction project.
Right.
The latest estimate, if memory serves, is $800 million, up from $6.
$800 million?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And it'll continue to rise because if nothing happens, things go up anyway. Yeah.
So you know what I'd like to see happen, Mark? I'd like to.
I look at you
look at me. I like that look. I always like that look. I'd love to see the city of Burlingame go to Governor Newsom and say, you know what? Why don't you strike a deal with the feds in D.C., kill high-speed rail, because they're not going to get any money from the feds anyway, at least for the next 4 years. Mm-hmm. Kill it. It's going nowhere. It's a huge drain. And in return for that, take whatever federal monies that might have gone in that direction
and direct it to
bring them to
the separation.
Not just us, but anywhere along the route that needs grade separation. San Bruno's talking about another one, I think. That's been a fundamental disagreement of a lot of us about high-speed rail.
Right.
The investment should be going into metro area transit, not trying to get back and forth to L.A. faster. And it's not even guaranteed it's going to be faster, right?
No. Well said, Joe. Thank you. So, all right, let's go to the big one that's supposed to be coming up this spring, the El Camino repave and tree removal, PG&E lines under the ground and all that kind of stuff. What's going on there? We were told it was going to be this spring. Do you think it's going to be on time?
This one, I think, it's been very quiet.
Yeah.
From an official stance.
Yeah.
It's been very quiet. But as far as I can tell, it's funded. The planning is pretty advanced, right? We've had surveyors out, their stakes laid out. So I think it's going to start happening here very soon. I think a lot of people are going to be very surprised when they start cutting down eucalyptus trees.
Joe, I don't think a lot of people actually know it's going to happen. When I have a conversation with somebody, they go, "What, really?" I go, "Yeah, it's happening soon."
And then you tell them it's 90% of all the trees.
300 and something trees,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
Give or take.
Yep.
Right. And then the sidewalks are going to be corrected. It'll be wonderful
Yep.
2 years from now.
Well, 2 years?
Or 3 years or 4 years, whatever it takes,
So
right?
do you remember what happened when we redid Burlingame
Yeah,
Avenue?
I sure do.
All the surprises they found,
Yeah,
utilities that they didn't know existed.
I
Back
do.
in the day.
I do, because it knocked the power out at Molly Stone several
Exactly.
times.
And they found a bunch of really old subterranean fuel tanks.
Oh, I
right?
didn't know
'Cause
that. Wow.
Back in the day, we were Auto Row and Auto City, and a lot of businesses used delivery trucks, and they would put their own tanks in pre-gas station. So you'd be digging along, and all of a sudden you'd hit
Boom. What's that, right?
a gas tank from 1910 or 15, and all work stops, right? Remediation, hazmat, et cetera. So hopefully the El Camino won't be as much of that, but there's always something they're going to find.
Yeah. And so I was just wondering, and get your thought on this. I understand San Mateo is going to be abandoning a lot of their bike lanes on Humboldt and to create some more parking, right?
I just read that. Yeah.
Okay. So in knowing that, we won't be able to drive down El Camino. California Drive will become a main vessel, right?
Yep.
And it already is, in a sense, and so is Carolyn. What do you think? They may remove the bike lane on California because it does congest things during the early morning hours.
It congests things a lot, and it's been a project that I didn't think was very well thought out.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. First off and foremost is there's bike lanes north and south on Carolyn.
Right.
Right? We've already taken a lane of traffic over there. Mm-hmm. So now we have bike lanes that run exactly parallel to each other that are like 40 yards apart.
Yeah.
On each side of the tracks. So I don't think they're going to deinstall the bollards and take out the islands. I'll give you another little talking outside of school a little bit, because
Yeah.
I know that's kind of why you had me on.
Absolutely.
I had a conversation as the project was getting started with a council member who will remain nameless, and I said, this looks like it's going to be trouble for through traffic and fire and police and ambulances and whatnot. I said, it can all be reversed, right? And that council member went, "Oh yeah, it's just paint."
It's just what?
Paint.
Paint.
Well,
Okay.
turns out it's not just paint.
Yeah.
There's the mid-street islands. There's the concrete bollards. So I think this thing's here to stay.
Yeah.
And it's hugely unpopular. Right?
Well,
you
I
can't talk
mean,
to anybody who thinks it's an improvement.
You don't really see a lot of people riding bikes down there unless it's a Saturday or a Sunday, and even that, it's kind of not as many as you would think.
And I'm a cyclist. I ride.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I ride around town. I love doing a circuit around town. And I've had some incidents at the Broadway intersection, which made me glad that I had a bright yellow jersey on.
Yeah.
But the bollards, the concrete bollards, I don't know if everybody knows what I mean by a bollard. It's the cylindrical concrete dividers.
Oh yeah.
So those could have been put over on Carolyn.
Well, to be honest with you, if I'm riding my bike on a Sunday afternoon or Saturday, I will use Carolyn. It's just seems a little safer for me overall. Yeah. That's how I feel.
Well, there was, as you said, I'm a news junkie. I read lots of newspapers all the time. And there was a letter to the editor of the Daily Journal a couple of weeks ago, I think, about a bicyclist, a hardcore cyclist. I think he was commuting on bicycles, talking about what they're doing down in Menlo Park. And he says, the thing that makes it the most dangerous to cycle around the streets is when drivers get confused. When there's something that they don't recognize and they don't quite know how to handle it, that's when we have problems.
Yeah.
And those, you could just look at the islands in the middle of California Drive and see all the tire marks on them. Mm-hmm. And you can look at some of these floppy signs all over town that have been plowed over and have to be replaced.
Yeah.
And it's you want to keep things simple.
All right, we're going to move on to district elections. We have, 5 districts here in Burlingame? And this is, our second or third year of district elections, if they happen? It's only been around for a couple, 3 years, right?
Second election, so that would be 4 years.
4 years? Wow, already.
If there's been 2 elections under the regime. Yeah.
Okay. Your thoughts on the district elections, are they working?
I really dislike this idea. I really don't think this is...
Kathy, your wife, who was mayor and a council person, for her time, she was in the big general election.
Citywide.
Right.
Everybody was until 4 years ago.
Right.
And there's an argument to be made on both sides. The argument for it is it makes it less expensive and a little bit easier to run for the seat. Right? It's fewer doors to knock on.
You don't have to
it's
be
lower
at
postage.
Top of Burlingame to go all the way down to where we live on Bayswater, right?
As a guy who's walked neighborhoods 5 times, 6 times actually, and knocked on pretty much every door in Burlingame at one point or another, I can appreciate that. What I don't like about it is twofold. One, it just robbed all of us of 4 out of our 5 votes. Right? This is, as I've written on The Voice, this is 80% voter suppression. Right? You had 5 votes, staggered 3 and 2, 3 and 2, and now you have 1 vote every 4 years.
Good point.
It's not good. The other thing I'm concerned about is and we saw this in several elections, people are running unopposed, right? Because the only person who could compete with you's got to live in your district.
Right. And I think Andrea,
yeah.
Papa John,
yeah.
She ran unopposed, right?
Yep. And Peter Stevenson was essentially unopposed,
correct.
even though confused people voted for somebody who dropped out.
Ricardo Ortiz is another example of that. I think a couple of years ago ran unopposed. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Fact check me.
No, you fact.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Anyway, that's enough of that.
That's the beauty of being able to backlink.
Yes.
5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Isn't it? Yeah.
It's all there on the blog.
Look it up, right.
I think there's an appetite amongst not just our city leaders, but other smaller cities to try and get this reversed. Or not reversed for big cities, but there should be an exception. If you don't have 100,000 people in the town, this is crazy, right? And don't forget, it's not just city council. It's every other elected position.
Right. It's kind of a mystery how it all started anyway, right?
A lawyer from Malibu decided to make a cause out of it and started to threaten to sue cities and then sued a couple and won.
Yeah.
And
I'd like to know what his motivation was for that. I mean, was it money that he was going to get by doing this or just wanted to get his name on the paper?
No, I think he had some sort of view of equity, minority representation. If you'll remember when we were going through it in Burlingame to create the boundaries, it wasn't just how many people are in the district, it's what was their racial composition.
Oh, okay.
And things like that. So, how many men versus how many women,
right.
all of the metrics, if you will.
Okay.
So, but when push comes to shove, you and I each lost 4 votes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And does it have thirdly, I guess it has. There's no way it couldn't have some impact on the responsiveness of some city council members. Not pointing any fingers in Burlingame, haven't heard any of this problem, but if somebody's not in your district, they're not in your district. All right? If I tried to call the county supervisor from the south end of the county, they're not going to pay as much attention to my concern as the one that represents me, right?
True. Right.
It's just a human nature, so.
All right. Thank you, Joe. There's been some excitement about the downtown park that's going to be going into next door to the new town square. It'll be opening later this year, I believe. Do you have any take on that?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Any more core public space that's not overbuilt with stack and pack high density housing is a good thing.
It's office buildings. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's office space.
Right.
And a restaurant.
Below, obviously, right? On the bottom floor.
Restaurant on the ground floor.
Yeah.
Lots of parking below.
Yeah,
if you remember the size of that.
And I understand, which is going to be great for Burlingame, the parking's going to be free. after 5 o'clock at night. So they'll keep that open.
Probably, yeah.
And that'll help downtown. Do you know if they're getting any rentals? Has that started yet?
I have not heard that there's any of that space has been rented except for the ground floor restaurant, which is going to be run by a very successful restaurant group that has multiple locations in the Bay Area.
Great.
Village Pub, and a couple in the city. Quince, I think, was another
Village
one.
Pub's Woodside, right?
Woodside, right.
Yeah, that'll be good. All right.
So, but the actual town square, at least in the summertime and early fall, should be quite an addition to downtown. I mean, let's face it, we're a little starved for music and performance space.
Right.
Right. You look at some of the other cities, but Palo Alto comes to mind.
Redwood City, too.
Redwood City comes to mind. The Courthouse Square. I could see us moving music in the park out of Washington Park onto the town square, or adding additional entertainment dates, music dates, concert dates. You can envision all sorts of other things.
Great. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I like Russ's idea of
putting standing on the soapbox.
Put a soapbox out
and
there.
Speak your mind.
Yeah,
right?
I've seen this in London. I've seen this, and it wavers between entertaining and informative,
right?
Depending on who's on the soapbox.
Yeah. Well, we could take it back to Cal Berkeley when Mario Savio was a student over there, and he was getting up, right?
Yep.
Same kind of thing.
Yep.
Be fun, right?
Yep.
Okay.
We'll
leave that to you,
My
Joe.
main hope is for more concerts.
Yeah. Housing crunch in Burlingame. Do we have a housing crunch here in Burlingame, and is the city doing anything about it?
That's an interesting question. Not just because of the fundamental question, but the boundaries around that, right? Is it a Burlingame problem? Is it a regional problem? Is it just the list price that you see in realty ads or on rental sites? I think the cost of living here does one thing, which is provides a national governor on how many people can live here, right? And so that takes us into a discussion about, is the rest of the infrastructure prepared for lots of new residents?
Okay.
Right. Now, keep in mind, we had, as of about 2 years ago, we had, I think, 1,200 new units approved and waiting to be built. And obviously some of those are happening, right? Rollins, Ingold on Rollins
North
Road.
Rollins.
The one up next to Public Storage on Adrian Court.
Yep.
The one right next
By
to
the
police station,
department.
which you can't even see the police department anymore.
Right, yeah.
So
in that sense, it feels like Burlingame is providing enough housing, right? But who can afford the housing? That's the flip side to it.
Well, that is a flip side to it. I think a couple of other things are equally important, which is the overall cost of living in anywhere in the Bay Area, right? The total cost of ownership includes, how do you power the house? How do you heat the house? How do you insure the house, right? There's a lot of other things that I think government should be focused on, that they should be able to control, rather than getting into the housing business. And the other fundamental premise is, this is a really attractive place to live. Burlingame in particular, the Mid-Peninsula, the whole peninsula, and the greater Bay Area is a really attractive place to live. So the idea that you can outbuild the global demand to live here seems a little bit unlikely, right? So the more you build, the more they will come.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you wanted to stunt that a little bit, the way to do that would be to zero in on more commercial space, right? Maybe a pause there or some restrictions there, so that the job growth slows down. And I know we're in a period where job growth is actually either flat or slightly declining, depending on what numbers you look at in the Bay Area. But over the long haul, it's up, and the more jobs you bring, the more people you bring.
Yeah.
Right? So that's neither a yes nor a no to, do we have a crisis? Whenever I write about the housing crisis, I put crisis in quotes, because I'm not sure, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Well,
We'll see how
it's a tough challenge,
yeah,
right?
It is a tough challenge,
You know,
right?
and the one thing I would say very clearly is this idea that the county can come in and do eminent domain on a property like the La Quinta Inn in Millbrae. That's not right.
That got killed, right?
No.
It didn't.
No.
So it's going full speed ahead?
Well, I don't know if it's going full
All right.
speed ahead either.
Okay.
But it's not dead yet.
Okay, it's not dead yet.
Yeah.
All righty.
So, and let's not forget there's major projects that are on the periphery of the Bay Area. You're familiar with the California Forever, where they want to build a whole new city up outside of Sacramento
I
and
had heard
Solona.
about it. I had heard about it, but I didn't really follow through on it. Yeah.
I mean, the argument for more housing is you need housing to be close to jobs. The argument against it is if we turn the whole peninsula into a megalopolis with high-rise stack and pack density, it's going to be a lower quality of life. Mm-hmm. Right? People moved here for a reason, right? And I just don't like seeing that amount of change without having what's already been approved be finished, occupied, and let's see how it goes.
All right.
Right?
Okay.
The last thing we need to do is have to upgrade the sewer system and do more on the water reservoirs and the electrical grid and school capacity and police and fire capacity. Should I keep going? You're nodding.
Well, I'm getting it, man. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. So
pragmatism, right?
Yep.
What really works? And how do you keep the horse in front of the cart instead of letting the cart get in front of the horse?
Yeah. So you mentioned the electrical grid. Are we going all electric kitchens, or are we going to still be able to cook with gas? What's going on here? And
well,
I like gas. Okay.
I like gas. I love gas.
Yeah.
I love gas. As somebody who spent a long time in the telecommunications industry, where what's known as hot standby or redundancy is fundamental to keeping the whole thing running, the idea that I would rely on any one source of power in my house just seems short-sighted. Mm-hmm. 2 years ago, we had, 53-hour power outage in Burlingame?
How many?
53 hours. Little over 2 days.
Jeez.
And I walked out to my grill. It was raining, so I didn't use the grill.
Right.
I walked out to the grill to get my grill lighter, the starter, walked inside, fired up the top burner, made coffee, made soup.
You were good to go.
Good to go. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, this is...
Is there a state mandate, though, that they wanted to have all electric by 2030?
30, yeah.
Okay.
And cars in the same time frame, new cars, and semi-trailer trucks in 2035, which is, I don't want to get you in trouble with Nextdoor any more than you are. But frankly, that's a joke. That's a joke. Anybody who knows anything about long-haul trucking and less-than-truckload trucking and the layovers that you have to charge these giant batteries and what it's going to do to the road surface just really doesn't understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
The defense we natural gas lovers have is the courts, because a couple of the courts have come in. The Berkeley started this, right, with an all electric ordinance for new buildings, and the courts shot that down. So they've had to retrench. I haven't seen official. We followed here in Burlingame.
Okay, so that was my question then.
Yeah.
With all the new housing that's going up here, do we have options? If the guy next door to me is going to build a new home, does he have to do electric, or can he do gas? Do you have any idea how that's going to work?
I'm not totally sure, but I think the all-electric, A, hadn't phased in yet, and B, is now in abeyance, court-ordered abeyance.
So
I think.
You're thinking that you could still go with gas then?
A mixture, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I think.
All right, yeah.
But you know what?
Yeah, I know.
We should.
Hey, that's why I'm asking you the question.
We should call the head of community development in, and you could do a whole podcast on this.
I could, man.
Yeah.
I just don't know what I'm talking about sometimes. Yeah. Okay, but I could come up with the questions.
Yeah,
that's for
absolutely.
Sure. Okay.
But again, why do you want to zero in on one thing? And there's a really good, I dug into this in detail about a year and a half ago on the Burlingame Voice. You can go to Google, Burlingame Voice, all electric, gas ban, and it'll pop up. I started walking around my house, right? And I have a 115-year-old arts and crafts bungalow. I started walking around my house and realizing that if I had to take out everything that's gas and replace it with electricity, electric appliances, electric heater, electric water heater, electric stove, it's a major renovation.
It's a fortune.
Well, if you could even get it done these days.
It's a fortune,
right?
Yeah.
And I saw the studies, the study session studies, and I don't believe that the authors of the study had gone out to a regular old general contractor and said, okay, give me a full end-to-end quote on this. Right? I got to put in a heat pump. Where do I pour the pad? Where do I run the ducts if I don't have current ducting? Where am I going to put 220 where I need it? Am I going to have to run new lines? Do I need a new fuse box or a circuit breaker box? The answer to that is yes. How much does that cost? How long does it take to get it installed? It just goes on and on. And then what do you do with the natural gas piping all over your house? Do you just leave it in there? Like the analogy I used on that post years ago was, do you just leave it there like the desiccated skeleton of some rodent that died in your wall? It's I don't get it.
Okay.
Making Mark laugh. That's what I do.
Yeah, that's what you do, man. That's for sure. Well, we're going to cook with gas as long as we can, okay?
Absolutely.
All right.
Hot tubs, pools, heaters, hot tubs.
When it goes on and on, when you really think about it.
And now you're tearing up your patio to run 220 out to a new heater? It's like, I guess certain flavors of contractor must love it, but the homeowner's not. This goes back to the total cost of ownership of a home in the Burlingame.
Yeah.
Right? Never mind the existing costs. The authoritarian implementation of new rules could dramatically raise it.
Yeah.
Right.
New rules.
New rules.
Wow. Okay, so the last couple of years we've had a gradual turnover on city council, which is fine. It's good. We have a couple of our stalwarts, Donna Colson and Michael Brownrigg, who've been around for quite a few terms and multi-years on the council, but doing a good job, all right?
Agreed.
But along with Peter Stevenson, he's rather new, I think about 3 years maybe? 3-4 years at the most. He came in with district, so maybe it was 4 years. But anyway, new, all right?
I don't think it's, I'm counting, because now he's the mayor, so in my mind, I'm thinking about how many years it took him to get to be mayor.
Right, I thought only 3.
Yeah, short.
Yeah.
Shorter than it was
And
for
then we
most
have
people. Right.
Andrea, Papa John, she's about a year in, I think,
Yeah.
maybe a little over, give or take. And of course, the newest one, Desiree Thayer, just a month, right?
Yep.
Okay, so, as a husband of a former council person and mayor, any challenges facing that as a group when things like that happen? Do they lose some of the camaraderie of being together for many years? And
What's the opposite of camaraderie? No, all kidding aside. Fresh blood is good. You don't want too much of it because there's definitely an institutional knowledge base that needs to be enough of it so that the new faces can learn from it. And one of the things you have to remember is what we see the city council doing is only a small portion of what they do. Right, they're on a bunch of subcommittees that deal with county affairs, deal with the airport, my least favorite neighbor, bicycle and pedestrian committees, and they do a lot of stuff behind closed doors. Union negotiations, lawsuits being brought and settled, and who knows whatever else happens behind closed doors. I have no idea. My wife was super circumspect about all of that, as they all should be. So having some institutional knowledge about how it works, how the city works, how the staff works. You could say the same thing about city staff, right? I'm sure City Manager Lisa Goldman would not like every department head to be brand new. That would be a challenge.
That would be a challenge,
Yeah.
right?
So
You need the experience to mentor the younger ones coming on.
Right. And you need a skill set coming on that addresses these sorts of things. And I think we're going to talk about the sheriff here in a bit.
We are.
So we'll save the
Sheriff's next up.
Yeah, we'll save the skill set.
Because I need some clarification on that.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in conclusion, everybody doesn't need to be highly tenured. It's not going to happen anyway because, frankly, it's a bit of a burnout job.
Right.
You know,
because most people have full-time jobs anyway, besides being on city council and attending their other committee meetings that they have to go to. Right.
But, you know, the days.
A lot of hours.
How long was Rosalie O'Mahony on? 24 years,
Something
I think?
like that. She was a 5-time mayor, I think.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think those days are over.
Probably. It's a burnout.
It's a challenge. You
Yeah.
know? And as the man at Molly's for years and years and years, I'm sure you saw plenty of city council members get buttonholed in the grocery aisle.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
For 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You know?
It was rather fun. Yeah.
But
you know what? It was nice to see them come through the store, talk to people, make themselves available.
Exactly.
Yeah, and going back to Russ's thoughts of maybe having some town halls and some group coffee clatches or whatever you would call them, drop-in coffee clatches. That's a good idea.
I'm sure every council member would much prefer that to being caught in aisle 7.
Oh, yeah, right.
With a complaint about the pothole in front of their house, to quote my wife.
That's funny. Okay. All right, we're going to go outside the city limits a little bit. We're going to go into San Mateo County. There's been a lot about the sheriff controversy. Corpus, what's her name?
Christina Corpus.
Thank you, Christina Corpus.
Recently elected.
Yeah. Yep. So can you give us a little lowdown on that? Because I don't really know what the issue is. Was there some things going on behind closed doors that weren't supposed to be going on or what?
I'll try and net it out. Through the course of some personnel actions, promotions and demotions and firings and actions that caused quite a few people in the department to quit, which is rare, right, ahead of your schedule. The supervisors got concerned. They were hearing complaints. So they engaged a retired Superior Court judge from Santa Clara County to do an investigation, right? First question is, what's going on? Mm-hmm. So, and this is a judge who's served forever and by no means would be thought of as in any way prejudiced against, any sort of person, right? And she put together a huge report. It's enormous, and it lays out a variety of things that have caused votes of no confidence by the supervisors, by a bunch of elected officials that aren't supervisors. The sheriff's department contracts with Millbrae, Portola Valley, Woodside, and San Carlos. Maybe not Woodside, Half Moon Bay, to provide police services. Right? We have Burlingame Police Department.
Millbrae doesn't have a police department?
Nope. They contract with the sheriff.
Okay. So
when two of the cities that you're contracting with, their city councils also vote a vote of no confidence, there's more than smoke there. There's fire, probably, in my opinion. And so the sheriff being an elected position, the county supervisors can't just fire the sheriff, right?
Right.
They can ask for resignation. They can apply pressure outside in political pressure, but in order to remove the sheriff, they are going out to the electorate with a measure that would give them a short-term authority to remove for cause if 4 out of the 5 supervisors vote for it.
So that wouldn't be a recall election?
No.
No. Okay.
That's an area of interesting. It's an interesting question. Let me come back to that.
Yeah.
So it's short-term, meaning they don't want to grant themselves the authority to remove sheriffs for cause in perpetuity. They just want it short-term. And those ballots, I got mine yesterday.
Really?
Showed up.
Oh, you know what? I saw a couple come in the house. Yeah.
Showed up in the mailbox yesterday.
Right.
Election is March 4th, so it's, what is it? What's today?
It's about a month from today then.
Today's the 5th,
yeah.
So it's a month from now. Sheriff Corpus has raised very little money to fight this measure. The opposing side has raised, by county election standards, not that much, I don't think, but quite a bit more than she has. A lot of it coming from the department members themselves.
So let me ask you something.
She's lost the confidence of the bulk of the department.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you hear.
Right.
So is there somebody that's in line to take that position then?
No.
No, there isn't.
No. I don't know. It's another good question.
The deputy sheriff becomes
they would,
in charge
yeah.
until they figure something out.
Or somebody who's quit comes back.
Right. So this
on
vote,
an interim basis until the next election.
This vote that we're going to have in March, it's a yay or nay? Is that what you're saying, or what?
It's a yay or nay to give the supervisors
the right
to remove for cause
right.
with an 80% vote.
Yeah.
Right. Now, you asked, is it a recall? It feels like a recall.
Yeah.
And Mark Simon, in his column, sort of said, look, it's the only thing on the ballot, and we kind of know what your yay or nay vote means. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean just what's on the ballot. It also means, she's probably gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
So then you layer on the possible legal action, and it's quite a mess.
It sounds like it. I mean, you see it in the DJ all the time. There's, they run quite. And then the letters to the editor talking about it as well. Yeah. But okay.
Well, we love the democratic process, but sometimes, and it goes again to, do you have enough candidates with enough experience to do the job that they're running for?
Yeah.
Right. It's the electorate has to make that call.
So here's what we're going to do, because we're coming close to the end here, and I got one or two more things I'm going to talk about. We're going to do the California water crisis or fish crisis I would like you to come back mid-year. And we're going to kind of review where we are with everything. And by then, hopefully, El Camino's being torn up and we're moving on, right? We'll figure out the bike lanes, et cetera. But
Water's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
And it's going to take a few minutes to talk about that, and I don't want to run out of time.
And wildfire is a big deal.
Yeah, and we need to talk about that, and because I know you had some concerns about Upper Hillsborough and all of that, and what we're going to do there, and right, because we don't want anything like that around here.
Right.
So,
but, and I do my homework.
I know you do.
I'm in email conversations with Public Works and Burlingame Police, and I have contacts in Hillsborough that know what's going on in Hillsborough.
Yeah.
That's the kind of post that might take me a month to build up to.
Yeah, and we need some time to talk about that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I want you to give a little plug. College of San Mateo, their station, KCSM, celebrating 60 years this year.
60 years.
Right.
I think this month.
Right. And there's a documentary that came out. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I love KCSM as a jazz fan. As you mentioned, I'm in my 6th semester of taking a jazz appreciation class up there. I'm on campus every Tuesday afternoon.
That's great.
Which we could also talk about what's happening on campus or not happening on campus. So it's 24-hour day, non-commercial, 91.1 FM. It's a beautiful signal in Burlingame. If you have a smart speaker, I happen to use Amazon's Alexa. You can say, Alexa, stream KCSM, and Alexa
Brings it
grabs
right up.
the stream and brings it right up, or you can stream it off their website, kcsm.org. It's really top shelf. I mean, we are talking about, and if you see the movie will be available during the next pledge drive as I believe a DVD giveaway for a gift of a certain level. I happened to see the preview up in the theater on the KCSM or the CSM campus, and it's really well done. It's got the DJs, the announcers on the radio.
And it's got the history. It's the history of the station,
history of
right?
the station, when various announcers decided to join this fledgling little station that wasn't even 100% jazz back in the day. So two things happened. K-Jazz, which was the big jazz
Out
station.
of San Jose? Were they in San Jose or the city?
Berkeley, I think.
Okay, Berkeley.
Yeah.
All right.
They went under, and then they donated their whole music library to KCSM.
Amazing.
So I've toured the studios. They do a couple of open houses a year.
Right.
And as a hardcore vinyl collector, it's something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really something. And these guys know their stuff.
Yeah.
And so you can go on the website. You can see there are different announcers with different sort of specialties and preferences. There's a guy, the musical director is a guy named Chuy who does Latin music.
He's been there for a long time.
He's been there
Most
a
of
long time.
these DJs have been there for quite a while.
That's actually one of the concerns that they have is they need to ensure that they have a bench for when some of these folks retire.
Move on, right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Clifford Brown Jr., whose dad was a very famous trumpeter, does a Sunday show with a top 20 countdown of the best jazz releases of the week.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. It's just really top shelf. We're very lucky. We used to be very lucky by being in the radio reach, right? But now the whole world can listen to it.
That's right, because they stream, right?
They stream, yeah. So and in the studio they have a big display, big screen, and they can see who's picking up the streams, in Tokyo, and Singapore,
cool,
and Australia,
huh? Yeah.
and Ireland, and
So get a real feel who's listening.
yeah. It's just top shelf.
So
jazz.
besides waiting for the pledge, is there another way to see the documentary?
It's on their front page of their website right now. It's playing at the SF Indie
Film Festival?
Indie Film Festival. Pulling it up here.
That starts pretty soon, right?
Starting right now, yeah. Saturday, February 8th at 6:45, the premiere, a documentary film celebrating 60 years of broadcasting and jazz at the Roxy Theater, House 1 in San Francisco.
Wow. So you buy the ticket in advance, I guess, if you can.
Click the headline on kcsm.org for ticket advance. Yeah, I imagine so. I don't know how big that theater is.
I have no idea, right.
The premiere drew a great crowd. I mean,
How long of a documentary is it? Hour?
Yeah, I want to say it was 45 minutes to an hour.
Good.
And then they had a panel discussion with all of the announcers on stage. So you got to see, the voice.
The guys, you put a face with a voice.
I mean, you'd walk up to somebody and it's like they don't need to introduce themselves.
Right, you know who they are.
I know them by voice,
By
right?
voice,
so
right.
really a lot of fun, right? There's certain things in the Bay Area that make it the best place to live.
Yeah.
Right? And unless we screw up the quality of life, it's going to continue to be the best place to live.
It's the best. I love going places, but you always come back here and you go, oh my goodness.
Sure. But and we talked about the business card. I handed it to a lady I had just met once before, and she was bemoaning the loss of Drager's and Trag's and Talbot's toy store and the bike shop and the Kathy's Cakes downtown. Right? It's we've got to be really careful. It's a special place to live, and it's pretty easy to screw it up if we're not careful.
Well, we're going to cover some of those tracks again mid-year, June, July, something like that. I'll have you back, okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Joe Baylock, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Mark.
You bet. I'd like to thank Joe Baylock, co-founder and editor-in-chief of the Burlingame Voice, for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small-town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Thanks to my Minister of Podcasts, Mike Nagler, my Director of Marketing, Adrian Kwok Lucchese, video by the great Ray Tyler, and original music by Bray. You can hear more of Bray at bray.com. This episode was produced and directed by Shelby Lucchese and was recorded at the Burlingame Public Library on Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this podcast, and no part can be copied and replayed without the written consent of the Burlingame Historical Society. And before I close out, be sure to look for my next episode of Burlingame It's a Small Town with Tom Simpson, grandson of David Whitehouse Simpson, co-founder of Forsyth & Simpson's Men's Clothing on Burlingame Avenue from 1917 to 1984. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.